companies, many organizations, industry does tuition reimbursement. So there's many ways to have that journey. Thanks for asking the question.
Thank you.
Okay, next one. Go ahead.
Hi there. My name is Vera Demchenko. I'm a systems test engineer at Lockheed Martin, working on the Orion program. My question for you circles back to a point that Rachel Lyons was talking about earlier with the imposter syndrome, where we are sometimes a little too afraid to ask for help, especially when we want our peers, our coworkers to look upon us fondly, look at us as experts in some kind of area. And when you reach this point, I think it's more common, especially with early career employees, how do you rip off the Band-Aid of anxiety to ask for help? I've heard that you mentioned you came up with some tricks, Rachel said, or sorry, Lauren, and I was wondering if you could share some of them with the rest of the group. Thank you.
Yeah. One is, I remember those days that because I didn't ask for help, I was pulling all-nighters. And then I show up to work the next day exhausted and maybe still haven't solved the thing. And just remembering, remember that last time you just asked that guy down the hall the answer and then you didn't have to stay here all night? So that's one thing. Another piece is, actually, I'll tell you a very embarrassing story. I'd mentioned that I'd been out of engineering for a while before getting back into the space industry, and I signed up to help with qualifying the Dragon spacecraft. They're like, we need people to do qual tests, and I was like, let me do this, I can do this. So I sit down, and they're like, here's NX, and I'm like, cool, I've never done NX before, but let's do it. And I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to make, it must have been like a rectangle with some holes in it, and I just it was not coming together. And after hours of sitting there trying to figure out how to get the datums right and all this other stuff, I'm just like, this is such a waste of my time. This is a waste of the company's time. The little hack part of it is I found someone I was also afraid of, I was a pretty senior engineer and I didn't know how to do this. I was like, this is embarrassing. I can't have people know this. I found an intern who, I was like, oh, he's probably clueless too. Oh no, this guy ran circles around me. But I found someone that I could go to and ask those questions to, that I felt like I'm not quite ready for the whole world to know that I'm an idiot on this thing. And so just throughout my career, whether it be finding someone that maybe is low risk to ask for help, or just finding people that are just extremely knowledgeable, just having those people you trust that are not really going to judge you, I think that's the number one best thing to do on that front, before then getting yourself comfortable with being a little bit more forward about that.
Such good advice. Yeah. Another way is to reframe the question and say something like, I'd like to talk to you about a certain situation that I'm facing and wonder if you've faced that before and how did you handle it? So kind of in a reverse way and see what happens, or ask for more learning or training. And I totally agree with finding safe places with a trusted peer or mentor, and maybe even the buddy system, partners on a program or in other parts of the company, or even, again, using your network here. You can ask for help in different places. It doesn't always have to be at work. Thanks for the question. Do you have another online one?
Well, the stream kind of had a moment. But we do have a question from the team. Somebody had asked, if you feel like you've started kind of on a road that you don't necessarily feel is going to end up where you want it to be, or you feel like you're headed towards some level of failure, kind of how would you suggest coming back from that to kind of reinstill that confidence in yourself to try again?
I would say, if I can.
Please.
You accept. It's part of the career path. It's part of life. There has been so many changes in our life, but everyone else here, that you really need to arrive in a point in which you accept the fact that that happened, and that's part of your life, and that helped you to change a career, to change path, and to find something different. So you had to pass through that moment in order to find the real path that you have in front of you, and that makes yourself 100% of who you are and what you want to do. So that's my advice, I would say.
And I want to add on to that. So one of my, I guess we're talking about hacks, and it's funny because you don't really think of them that way at the time, but I'm like, I guess maybe that's helpful to think of it. Honestly, one of the tools in my toolbox that I reach into most often when I'm having a really hard day or I don't know how to do something is I reach back to another time where I did a really hard thing. Right? So, I mean, so often we're so focused on the future. Can I do this new thing? I don't know how to do this. And, you know, I pull back from those memories where it was like, I remember when I was brand new, I had no idea what I was going on, but look what I accomplished with that team. Look what we did together. And, you know, the piece of the story that you're in right now is just a piece of it. It's not the whole story. And so helping to have context to realize that where you're at today is part of that journey, and it will have better, you know, you will have better days. It will come back around, but reaching back to those times where it was tough and remembering that it's like, hey, I got through these. I had people to help me get through those. I find that to be very helpful. I do that all the time.
Excellent advice.
Hi, my name is Shayna Hume. I'm a PhD student at the University of Colorado Boulder studying Mars EDL. First off, thank you so much for this panel. It's incredible. You all are bringing up such amazing points. One thing, Lauren, that you said really early on has been sitting with me, and I've been thinking the whole time that you guys have been talking. You talked about how very often our personal and our professional lives are siloed, and that we don't really consider their impact on each other. I think in my experiences networking and getting to know other young professionals in the industry, that a lot of young women especially feel like their personal lives aren't allowed to exist in their professional spheres. They feel some pressure from their industry or maybe the history of that industry or whatever else. And I was wondering if any of you have advice for how to take steps towards that integration, how to go after all of these ambitions that we have for the space industry while also taking the time to acknowledge yourself, and how to go forth on that path when it doesn't always feel like you're qualified enough to deserve it yet.
I have some thoughts on that.
Go ahead.
So I think that, you know, life, it's a series of different events and sequence. You know, you get to know yourself better, right? And the person you are today is not the person that you will be tomorrow or a year from now. We're constantly changing and growing, at least we should be, because we all want to get better. You know, I kind of find when you're talking about personal and, you know, sort of work-life integration, it's taken me a long time to sort of recognize and understand for myself what I need to do to be healthy. And for me, my personal life is a big part of that. So it's like I have to do yoga in the morning sometimes, or I have to make sure that I go to church because that's a big part of my reset for the week, you know, or I have to go on walks with my husband. Like everybody has certain things, I think, that just center them and help them remember what's important in life. And it's really easy to lose sight of that, especially when we're running the race to try and be like everybody else and get to a certain level or have a certain title. And so I think that making sure that you're surrounded by people that can help you to remember that. And I think being intentional about carving out time for those things, which I fail at on a regular basis. I was really good during COVID, and then I moved and things got started again, and I haven't been as good with some of those things. And I notice, like I feel it in my body, the stress and, you know, exhaustion, all those things. So
You say you can make the most of networking events like, Fusion Forum, Space Symposium, things like that.
Just talk to people.
Yeah.
I have embarrassed myself on so many levels. Just go and
Oh, yeah.
but you benefit from it too. I mean, I remember going when Jan Werner was the director general of ESA. I cornered him and I said, "I need your advice." I'm humiliated today on that, but he gave me advice. He then emailed me later. I was just like, oh my God. So I would say, one, I'm still not quite, I still get extremely nervous when I meet new people. I have to just really psych myself up for it. I don't think that's ever really gonna fully go away from me, but I do keep in my mind that it works out. That yes, it's going to be a little bit awkward. How many people feel socially awkward going up to strangers? I mean, it's really difficult for me, but I just go, we just got to do it. And yeah, some conversations are going to be a little weird. Other ones are going to be awesome. On the whole, you're going to get so many great connections and interactions with people. There's so many people here. I walked in here. I hadn't been to, this event in years. And I go in and I'm just like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever. There are friends that I met at this event and at IAC at the Space Generation Congress that when I'm traveling the world, I go and I visit them still. It's been like 7 or 8 years. So yeah, just put yourself out there. It's awkward and weird for everybody. We're a bunch of nerds at a space conference. It is weird for everyone. Yeah. And so just know everyone's feeling the weirdness, but the awesomeness that can come from it is totally worth it.
Yeah, agree with all of that. And flip script and vulnerability is a superpower. Mm-hmm. You don't go up to somebody, say, man, I had a really bad day, and have them be like, wow, that sucks. Go away. I don't want to hear about it. Usually they, reach out and want to say, oh, man, tell me about it. It's not something to be embarrassed about. And something you said about leaning into your most genuine self, and then kind of connecting the dots with the question.
So feel free to come up to any of our panelists at the next break or throughout the week. Come up to each other. This really is the most power in this room, and thank the Space Generation Advisory Council and all the organizers of Fusion Forum and all of the organizations that supported and enabled you to be here. Be sure to go back and thank them. Thank them for their support in you. This is a huge power in community, and being acknowledging that support that you have. So I encourage you to keep track of all the tidbits, the hacks that you come up with during the week. Share them with your friends, with your colleagues, with your boss, whoever supported you in being here, and realize that that's part of the network that Fusion Forum creates. So thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Do a quick picture up here.
What's that? Oh, a picture.
Okay, thank you, Deborah, Lauren, John and Davide. I hope that with their insight, you guys are better equipped to make the most out of Fusion Forum, get the most out of Space Symposium, of course, in your careers. Next, I would like to introduce Jenna Gerahy from NASA SCAN. Jenna is the Network Integrity Manager at SCAN for NASA headquarters. She develops and oversees the implementation and application of national security policies and NASA cyber and physical security directives for all space and ground network infrastructure in NASA, including the Near Space Network and the Deep Space Network. Ms. Gerahy's love of all things space and pride in the essential role that network security plays in NASA space communications permeates her life outside NASA. She enjoys sharing the magic of space with her 3 sons and daughter, as well as their classmates and friends. Please welcome Jenna. Of course.
Good evening, everybody. So, before I get started, that previous panel was phenomenal. I don't know how I'm going to follow that. But I wanted to take a quick second to, when I walked in today, I was greeted and I was immediately offered, because I had my daughter on my hip, that there was a mother's room. How far have we come as an industry to have that diversity? I mean, the panel just spoke for an hour about it. The opportunities for parents, the opportunities for men and women, it is phenomenal. The organizers have bent over backwards to accommodate us, and I just wanted to take a quick second and thank them for all their hard work. So thank you, organizers. All right, so let's just get started. Let's get right into this.
50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. The trail we blazed cut through the fictions of science and showed us all what was possible.
It's very pretty out here.
Today, our calling to explore is even greater. To go farther, we must be able to sustain missions of greater distance and duration. We must use the resources we find at our destinations. We must overcome radiation, isolation, gravity, and extreme environments like never before. These are the challenges we face to push the bounds of humanity. We're going to the moon to stay by 2024, and this is how.
This all starts with the ability to get larger, heavier payloads off planet and beyond Earth's gravity.
For this, we designed an entirely new rocket.
The Space Launch System. SLS will be the most powerful rocket ever developed.
And with components in production
and more in testing,
this system is capable of being the catalyst for deep space missions.
We need a capsule
that can support humans from launch
through deep space and return safely back to Earth.
For this, we've built Orion.
This is NASA's next generation human space capsule.
Using data from lunar orbiters that continue to reveal the moon's hazards and resources.
We're currently developing an entirely new approach to landing and operating on the moon.
Using our commercial partners to deliver science instruments and robotics to the surface, we are paving the way for human missions in 2024.
Our charge is to go quickly and to stay, to press our collective efforts forward with a fervor that will see us return to the moon in a manner that is wholly different than 50 years ago.
We want lunar landers that are reusable,
that can land anywhere on the lunar surface. The simplest way to do so is to give them a platform in orbit around the moon from which to transition.
An orbiting platform to host deep space experiments and be a waypoint for human capsules. We call this lunar outpost Gateway.
The beauty of the Gateway is that it can be moved between orbits.
It will balance between the Earth and Moon's gravity.
In a position that is ideal for launching even deeper space missions.
In 2009, we learned that the moon contains millions of tons of water ice.
This ice can be extracted and purified for water. It can be separated in oxygen for breathing or hydrogen for rocket fuel.
The moon is quite uniquely suited
to prepare us and propel us to Mars and beyond.
This is what we are building.
This is what we're training for.
This we can replicate throughout the solar system.
This is the next chapter of human space exploration.
Humans are the most fragile element of this entire endeavor, and yet we go for humanity. We go to the moon and on to Mars to seek knowledge and understanding and to share it with all. We go knowing our efforts will create opportunities that cannot be foreseen. We go because we are destined to explore and see it with our own eyes. We turn towards the moon now, not as a conclusion, but as preparation, as a checkpoint toward all that lies beyond. Our greatest adventures remain ahead of us. We are going.
We're going.
We are going.
We are going. We're going.
Favorite videos. NASA has the best media team, and hands down, that's one of my favorites. I know the James Webb engineer did one too, and I'm sure it was phenomenal. So I am going to start right out with a question. I'm in a room full of people that are phenomenally smarter than I'll ever be, so I'm sure these are going to be easy for you. So Gateway. We talked about Gateway in the moon. What are the three first international space agencies that will be partnering with NASA to build the Gateway? Just raise your hand if you know, if you want to take a guess. And I brought good swag. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to guess Canadian Space Agency. Only have to guess one?
You only have to guess one. Who was over here? Yeah? JAXA. ESA. All right. So, right on. You guys are amazing. So throughout this deck, I have sprinkled in questions, some real softballs. So I imagine like everyone's going to know the answer for stuff. I brought good NASA swag because I want this to be an interactive conversation. I don't want to stand up here and brief at you. I want to have a conversation. So if at any point during this brief you have a question, raise your hand, interrupt me. We don't have to wait to the end. We can pull on strings. It'll be great. Okay. So like I mentioned, I'm Jenna Garricky. I work for the Space Communication and Navigation Office, And we are basically the NASA's mission ground comm. I do physical and cybersecurity, which is a very interesting challenge on a day-to-day basis. And our folks manage, operate, and develop all of NASA's space communication capabilities. We are the representative for all spectrum within the international community. And we are the representation for all things from NASA mission ground comm. So it is anything that we fly within orbit, we're doing the comm from ground to all of our satellites. On a day-to-day basis, NASA Scan supports over 100 missions, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We have 2 main networks, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But these are some of the missions that we support on a day-to-day basis. So, easy one. Can anyone name any of the satellites up here? I see another hand over here. Yeah? You got it. Thank you. So our comm requirement is 99% availability. Ooh, Angela, can I steal this water? Thanks. 99% availability for most missions. The International Space Station, however, because we're dealing with astronauts, we have to have 100% availability, constant communication. And there's one more satellite up here for all the money. Anybody know it? Yeah? That's it. LRO, that's right. All right, next question. October 4, 1957, first satellite went up. Was it? Yeah. That's right. So according to the United Nations of Outer Space Affairs, a total of 8,378 objects have been put into orbit. Currently, there are 4,995 still in operations, which is crazy. It's massive traffic jam up there. So from a scan perspective, our office, on a day-to-day basis, this is what our constellation looks like. So when you look at the International Space Station travels at approximately 17,000 miles per hour, 4 miles per second. It's crazy. We have to keep comm with them constantly chasing them. And then we've got our more near space satellites, we've got our deep space satellites. It's crazy, the portfolio on a day-to-day basis. So the Near Space Network. And this is our Fairbanks, Alaska 18-meter. So we're a worldwide network of satellites and stations that support direct-to-Earth and relay. We have a phenomenal relationship with our international partners, and this particular network is critical for human spaceflight safety, and then any critical event coverage for James Webb, ISS, Hubble, all of that stuff. So this particular fleet is phenomenal and critical for NASA's fleet. Now, later on I'll talk about, there's one particular fleet of satellites called the TDRS, Tracking Data and Relay Satellites, that is a very, very critical from my perspective. They are, humanitarian-wise, sustainability-wise, has provided us phenomenal support. Okay, so without this TDRS fleet, without 3 TDRSs on any given day of the week, this is what communication with the ISS would look like. All that red is bad news bears, right? We have to keep calm with ISS constantly. So I said it before, what's the ISS availability requirement? Yeah, 100%. So with just 3 TDRSs placed around the globe, this is what comm with the ISS looks like. All right, the Deep Space Network. Tasman is in here somewhere, from Australia, right? So we have a ground station in Canberra, Australia. This consists of 3 geographically dispersed ground stations, about 120 degrees separated from each other. They are focused on detecting these faint signals and differentiating them from stellar noise. obviously some of the missions that we've talked about before, Voyager, the Mars rover, New Horizons, Kepler. One of the interesting things about the Deep Space Network is they've got a ground station in Canberra, ground station in Madrid, and a ground station just north of Pasadena, California. And they used to run simultaneously. All 3 stations, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they created this program called Follow the Sun. So they upgraded the technology, they mirrored each site, so everyone was the exact copy of all the rest of the stations. And now we literally follow the sun. So whatever ground station is facing the sun, that's what's operating and following all of these missions, and then it hands over. So Madrid goes to Goldstone, Goldstone goes to Canberra, rinse and repeat. So when you combine those 2 networks, this is the ground fleet that you have. So, and I know from talking with the organizers, there's a phenomenal number of countries represented in this room, so I'm sure you're going to see some from your home country as well. I have had the opportunity to go to the majority of these stations here. The people are wonderful. Obviously, the space community is very unique. And NASA it's funny, we have an interesting problem. We're a victim of our own success. We create these satellites, and they live far beyond the expectation or their life expectancy. So we can't modify the ground equipment on the ground because you'd have to modify it on the spacecraft as well. So we sometimes have to piece together using some very interesting and innovative techniques to try and keep these going as much as possible. We have one ground station that has Ford Aerospace equipment. And I couldn't even tell you the last time Ford did anything with space, but we got to keep that system running. So it's kind of interesting. So NASA has approximately 17,000 civil servants and several times more contractors. They work tirelessly every day to move science forward. There are a countless number of examples how NASA affects our everyday life, and I've actually put a couple up here as an example. So we'll start with the smoke detector. In 1970, NASA needed a smoke detector for the new Skylab that we had. It was like the first International Space Station. We needed a detector that had for fire and smoke. NASA partnered with Honeywell to create the first smoke detector, and now it's being used in all homes and new construction. Bonus question, and this is like near and dear to my heart because no one ever gets this right, so I have high hopes for this group. What is this? Yes. Yes. Everyone says portable vacuum cleaner. And while it is a portable vacuum cleaner, it is a dust buster. So obviously we can't have tiny little particles roaming around the International Space Station, getting into the instruments. We have to keep it pristine. So NASA worked with industry to develop the first dust buster or portable vacuum. The next one, the cordless drill. So Apollo astronauts had to be able to drill into the moon's surface. So they had these big, heavy gloves. They needed something that they could hold using the big gloves. And also, they couldn't be tethered to the lander, so it had to be cordless. So NASA teamed up with Black & Decker to create the first cordless drill. Sneakers. I never thought in a million years when I came across this that this was a thing. NASA had an engineer, Frank Rudy. He was an aerospace engineer, and his job was to design the boots that the astronauts wore. He found a way to encapsulate an airbag within a rubber bladder, basically, and put it into the insole of the astronauts' boots, because the G-forces on the astronauts when they go up created a lot of damage for these astronauts. So he made it so that when they went up, they were much more comfortable. There was less physical damage on the astronauts. So when he left NASA, he went to Nike and he said, hey, I think I have a technology that would help high-performing athletes exponentially decrease the impact on a single step. So he partnered with Nike and created the Air Tailwind that came out in 1979. So last, and probably most important on this slide, was the firefighters. So in 1970, Kennedy put out a call to all the local municipalities and said, hey, what can we do to help? I'm sure there's something that you guys need help with. And firefighters raised their hand and said, you know, we have firefighters that are, they're going down in the line of duty due to injury. Their tanks are really heavy, and so sometimes they're just choosing not to wear them when they go into a fire. Firefighters were dying from smoke inhalation, their masks weren't very good, their warning system when their air was low was terrible. So NASA, that's their thing. We keep astronauts alive in space, and we can help them here on the ground. So Kennedy and Johnson teamed up, worked with the firefighters to see like what worked best for them, what felt good. They were able to take a tank that's normally about 55 pounds and reduce it down to 20. I mean, a phenomenal weight delta. They were also able to create a mask that was much more tight-fitting on their face, huge, right? So less smoke inhalation. And then they created a warning system that's similar to the astronauts use. And it only, when the air depletion was low, it only was sounding within their own mask. Before, it was something that was external, and it was creating a lot of chaos in an emergency. So now the firefighters knew, like, when their alarm went off, it was time to get out. So countless number of firefighters, you know, their lives are saved, the reduction in injury because of the teaming with NASA. All right, this is hands down my favorite slide. The first briefing I ever received when I came to work for NASA solidified that I will forever be working in the space industry and supporting however I can. Does anyone know in the bottom left-hand corner what station that is? South Pole Station. So, South Pole Station's run by, sorry for the feedback. South Pole Station is the National Science Foundation, South Pole and Antarctica. Scientists are completely isolated during the winter months. No in, no out. Once they're down at the station, they're there for several months between mid-Feb and October. Up here in the top right, that's Dr. Jerry Nielsen. She was the physician that was there to take care of all of the engineers while they were on campus. A couple months into her rotation, she was doing a self-breast exam, noticed a lump. Super scary, she all by herself, she's a general physician. At the time, COM, this was in 1999, COM from the South Pole to anywhere was atrocious and slow. So the National Science Foundation reached out to NASA. Can you help us? We have a doctor, she's sick. So NASA repositioned a TDRS, remember TDRS is our COM for the International Space Station. We repositioned a TDRS to the South Pole so that she could have constant communication with her doctor back in Chicago. It was through those video chats that she was able to perform a self-biopsy, which is incredible to think about. There was a break in the weather. The test results did come back. She was positive for breast cancer. There was a break in the weather. The Air Force was able to drop in a payload of chemo. It wasn't good enough to get her out. They couldn't land, but they could drop a payload. So she continuously used COM through TDRS with her doctors to administer her own chemotherapy until they could get her out. There was another break in weather another month later. Air Force was able to come in, scoop her up, and bring her back stateside, save her life. So phenomenal to think that, you know, NASA's satellite contributed to that. 2 years later, there was a weatherman down there, and he was screwing around and outside, and he didn't have protective boots on. He slipped and fell and ripped his ACL. Again, National Science Foundation reached out to NASA and said, hey, can we use your TDRS again? The general physician was able to work with the folks, doctors back in Boston, and do an orthoscopic surgery on this weather guy using telemedicine. It was just crazy. The bottom left, we've talked about Hubble. So I'm sure many of you people in the room can relate to the story. Have family members that have had cancer, have had friends that have had cancer, even yourself may have fought it at one point. I come from an extremely large Irish Catholic family, and all of the women, we have the cancer gene, all of my aunts have had breast cancer. All of them are alive today because of NASA. So Hubble was launched in 1990, and it was going out to take these phenomenally intimate photographs of space. Well, the first photographs that came back were really blurry and fuzzy, couldn't really distinguish what was what. So NASA scientists and engineers buckled down, got to work, and recalibrated. Hubble was able to get much more stunning photographs. And then NASA turned around and started to work with the technicians of mammography units to help them get more sharper, clearer images. This allowed doctors to guide a needle directly to the suspicious area. They were no longer having to make incisions, which reduced recovery time, which reduced pain. Radiologists were able to detect smaller calcifications and reducing the time in early detection. So you're saving people's lives and you're saving countless amount of money from the healthcare system. So, NASA certainly is furthering the human condition. Okay, so I'd be remiss. So my heart is